In United Nations का charter, you have a phrase officially there why the UN exists. There is first clause itself. Charter का पहला clause है, पहला article है. It says to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, which twice in our lifetime has brought untold sorrow to mankind. So whenever you understand and study UN, बाकी सब चीजें ठीक है, सोशो इकोनॉमिक चेंजेस हो रहे हैं, WHO काम कर रहा है, FAO काम कर रहा है, यूनेस्को है, ये है वो है, सब कुछ ठीक है, अच्छा है, बट द बेसिक रीजन दैट or basic purpose of the existence of UN, the thing for which it was created, is to ensure that no more third war. They had seen in their own lifetime दो वर्ल्ड वॉर. तो यूथ में आपने फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर देखा होगा, और जैसे थोड़ी उम्र बढ़ेगी आप सेकंड वर्ल्ड वॉर देखते, 50 साल के अंदर दो युद्ध हो गए. इट इज नॉट अ महायुद्ध, एंड इट वाज अ स्काउर्ज ऑफ वॉर. दे हैव स्काउर्ज ऑफ वॉर. And Second World War was even more disastrous than the First World. First War कितने लोग मरे? 1 करोड़ 2 करोड़. इन Second War भाई 6 करोड़ 10 करोड़ लोग मारे गए. So it's a big number. And if the Third World War happens, we have a guarantee it will be even more disaster. इतने भी न्यूक भी आ चुके हैं. Now once you know that first से 72 second था, second से third पक्का 72 होगा, उसको रोको. We have to stop the third war from occurring. That was the main purpose UN was formed. तीसरा युद्ध नहीं होने देना. So whenever you assess the success and failure of UN, बाकी सब चीजें पेरिफेरल है. हेल्थ में क्या किया, इकोनॉमी में क्या किया, एजुकेशन में, तो सब है, इंपॉर्टेंट है, बट सेंटर में क्या है? युद्ध हुआ कि नहीं, युद्ध रोका कि नहीं रोका. दैट इज द फंडामेंटल एस्पेक्ट. So UNO was established on 24th of October 1945 by the peace-loving nations of the world to protect future generations from destruction and devastations caused by the wars. So what is the background of UN formation? As I said, the first point, the World War II had left behind a trail of devastation. Almost 60 million people perished compared to 20 million during World War I. So after World War I, they had created League of Nations. But League of Nations का भी same reason director था, stop the second war, it failed. Now they want to go for UN, and UN has to be better than League of Nations. It should not fail, it cannot fail. That is my first point. Especially in the nuclear age, such breakdown is not permissible. Then second point, world leaders who had learned from the failure of the League of Nations were eager to establish a successful UNO. It's very logical. You have that question in UPSC also, comparison of League versus UN. We have that in our notes, we'll discuss that in some detail as well. If you compare League of Nations with UN, what is the difference? And why UN is more successful than League of Nations in a relative manner? Yeah, typical, this is history type of thing. Then the influence of the principles of the Atlantic Charter. No, Atlantic Charter we have not discussed it. I was keeping it for the topic of decolonization, but अभी थोड़ी झलक दे देता हूँ. Atlantic Charter was a charter which was signed between US and UK at that time 1941. ये क्या था भाई? ये वही चीज थी जो वुडरो विल्सन के 14 पॉइंट्स थे पहले. So in case of World War I, Woodrow Wilson's speech created 14 points that became the war manifesto. War objectives. आप युद्ध भले पहले ही शुरू कर दिया हो, कोई दिक्कत नहीं, बट लड़ तो रहे हो. What is that you want to achieve at the end of it? What is your war objective for World War I that became Woodrow Wilson's 14 idealist points? For World War II, when America enters the war, again it needs some kind of manifesto agenda. हमारा grand vision क्या है? So that vision was outlined in this Atlantic Charter. तो सारी बड़ी-बड़ी अच्छी चीजें. And why is it called Atlantic Charter? Because it was signed in a meeting between Churchill and Roosevelt on a ship in Atlantic Ocean. अटलांटिक समुद्र के भरे बीच में दोनों एक तरफ यहाँ से आया, एक उस तरफ से आया, समुद्र में दोनों मिले, चप्पी लगाई, टाइम किया, चले गए. So because it was on high seas of Atlantic, it is called Atlantic Charter. One of the clauses in that कि हम ऐसे कोई संगठन बनाएंगे, ऐसे प्रिंसिपल्स होंगे, इसको हमें दोबारा वॉर को रोकना. That became the very basic idea from where UN emerges. We'll study the details of Atlantic Charter later on in next lecture, because that also becomes significant for decolonization. Now, agreement between USA, Britain, USSR, and China in Arcadia Conference in 42, where they decide कि चलो हमें आके ये सब करना है. Let us come together and now decide कि हमें UN बनानी है, and let us decide to draft the charter of UN. उसकी constitution बनाते हैं. So it was the beginning point after which the thinkers sat together and they drafted the UN Charter. Finally, United Nations Charter was signed by 51 states at the San Francisco Conference, which was held in 1945. 4 साल 3 साल बाद, these nations became the founding members of UN. India also is a founding member of one of those 45 countries was India. India became signatory to the UN founding process even before India was independent. And Charter was ultimately adopted in 45 only. It declared the aims and objectives of the UN. So आपको याद, उसके बीच में कई सारे other conferences भी, Dumbarton Oaks है, ये है, वो है. We don't need to go into those. Tehran है, Cairo है. But we need to only focus on one conference, that is, if somebody asks you in MCQ, नहीं पूछेंगे, but पूछ लिया, which conference led to the formation of UN? San Francisco. Correct. Okay. Now, what are the basic aims and objectives of UN as per the UN Charter itself? To preserve peace and to eliminate war. Very simple, most fundamental objective. To suppress those powers that violate peace and to solve international disputes. To remove the causes of conflict by encouraging economic, social, educational, scientific and cultural progress, as well as cooperation throughout the world, and safeguard rights of nations and men. So ये simple charter है. Do not try to memorize it. कोई जरूरत नहीं है. If you want to memorize करना ही है, तो पहला point बस है to preserve peace and eliminate war. आसान भी है, जरूरी भी है, काम भी आपका चल जाए. ठीक है. So if a question comes on the success and failure of UN, how do you start? अगर मैं आपको थोड़ा सा let me take on some round trip. If I ask a question in general studies too, कि performance of Indian Parliament has been declining in the recent past. Discuss. Typical GS2 question है. इंडियन पार्लियामेंट का सक्सेस, फेल्यूर, परफॉर्मेंस आपको इवेल्युएट करना है, असेस करना. कैसे करो? कुछ अच्छी चीजें बताओ, कुछ बुरी चीजें बताओगे, यही करोगे आप? ऐसे नहीं करना. ये चीजें करनी है, बट वो बाद में आती है. बिफोर यू स्टार्ट असेसिंग एनीथिंग फॉर गुड एंड बैड इन योर आंसर और इन योर थिंकिंग, उसकी एक प्रीरेक्विजिट होती है, वो ये होती है डिफाइनिंग द पैरामीटर्स ऑफ असेसमेंट. कौन से पैमाने पे, कौन से आधार पे, कौन से तर्ज पे आप उसको जज करो. पहले डिफाइन द पैरामीटर्स. इफ यू वांट टू असेस द सक्सेस ऑफ पार्लियामेंट, सम पीपल में चूज द पैरामीटर कि साल में कितने घंटे बातें करी, कितने सेशन किए, नंबर ऑफ आवर्स आर डिक्लाइनिंग, तो क्या परफॉर्मेंस कम हो रहा है, नंबर ऑफ डेज एंड आवर्स. द सेकंड पैरामीटर वुड बी हाउ मेनी बिल्स दे आर पासिंग. भाई 20 बिल पास, 50 बिल पास किए, 50 बिल पास करना अधिक एक्टिव है क्या. थर्ड थिंग कुड बी how much hour of discussion is taking place on national issues. Fourth thing could be the quality of discussion and background of the MPs. So it could be anything you want. I am not saying कि ये पैरामीटर बेहतर है कि वो पैरामीटर. आपको आपके पैरामीटर को डिफाइन करने पड़ेंगे आपके मन में, and then you assess कि on which parameter is it going good or going bad. Likewise, in case of UN also, then you want to assess. तो question UPSC पूछती है, assess the performance of United Nations from 1945 to 1991. Discuss कि भाई UN is only paper tiger, it's a toothless bulldog. Now, Indian academia में I have seen the paper, I have seen the words like paper tiger. बस कागजी शेर है, कुछ करता तो है नहीं. मतलब क्या खुली चीज है. But if you read the typical British academia or American academia, they use the word toothless bulldog. भोंकता बहुत है, काटता है नहीं. मतलब बातें बातें करता है, but actual work. तो this type of phrasing is in question or in your introduction, and then you put a question mark कि क्या सच में ये है, कुछ काम किया है कि नहीं, and then you start assessing. to assess that in your parameters. What are those parameters? वो आप और मैं तय नहीं करेंगे, यूएन ने खुद दिए हुए हैं. So these objectives or aims themselves become the parameter for your assessment of success and failure of UN, जो उसने खुद के लिए सेट करके रखे हुए हैं. So you start in the answer by saying, as per the UN Charter, the objectives of UN are 1, 2, 3, and on those parameters, ये success है, ये failure है. And not all objectives are equally important. The fundamental first and the most important one is the preserve peace and eliminate war. That is why we should memorize this phrase to save the succeeding generations from the scourge of war, which twice in our lifetime has brought untold sorrow to mankind. अगर आप इस लाइन को रट लोगे, and if you write that line in conclusion, at least ये तो हुआ है. भले आपके सेटिस्फैक्शन के अनुसार काम नहीं हुआ है, बट एक काम पक्का हुआ है, थर्ड वर्ल्ड वॉर आज तक नहीं हुआ. उसमें यूएन का कुछ ना कुछ तो रोल रहेगा. शशि थरूर was our diplomat in UN, not our, but he was a UN diplomat, non-Indian diplomat. वो IFS ऑफिसर नहीं था, वो UN का डिप्लोमेट था. बट एनीवे, तो शशि थरूर ने कई बार कहा है कि जैब इज बेटर देन वॉर. आई थिंक इन इंसरिटी भी वो स्टेटमेंट कही आता है. लोग कहते यूएन में लोग करते क्या, जाके बतियाते रहते हैं, भाषण देंगे. पाकिस्तान का आदमी भाषण देगा, इंडिया को कोई और भाषण देगा, हम तालियां बजाएंगे. काम कहाँ पे होता है? तो व्हाट शशि, एंड दैट क्वेश्चन वाज पोस्ट टू शशि थरूर कि भाई फिर यूएन काम की क्या है? तो शशि थरूर ने कहा था सीधी बात है कि भाई देखो, जैब इज प्रेफरेबल टू वॉर. अगर वो नहीं होता, आप तलवार लेके चलते, बंदूक लेके चलते. बंदूक से झगड़ने से अच्छा है बातों में झगड़ो वहां बैठ के कुर्सियों पे. तो इट प्रोवाइड्स अ प्लेटफॉर्म, it provides a forum where all such kind of energy gets channelized in non-violent way. तो यूएन का एक बड़ा रोल है in avoiding third world war. But ठीक है, we'll go into the assessment little later. These are the objectives. 6 main organs of the UN. Now ये question थोड़ा सा factual type होता है, and they will not ask this question in optional. They may ask in GS or they may ask in PSI, or not an option, but we have mandatorily to go through UN structure. There is one of the 6 organs on which UPSC History Optional has already asked a question, and that is Security Council. पूछा है, कन्फर्म नहीं पूछा. वो GS एंड ऑप्शनल, PSI UPSC में नहीं, हिस्ट्री ऑप्शनल में नहीं. वो तो कंटेम्पररी चीज हो गई ना, हम वो थोड़ी पढ़ेंगे. पूछ ले कभी तो अलग बात है, लेकिन आई डोंट एक्सपेक्ट दैट टू हैपन. बट यू एनीवे हैव टू स्टडी दैट फॉर जीएस. एनीवे पढ़ना ही है. बट यहाँ पे सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल के बारे में उसका पूछा सवाल ये था कि सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल इज द हार्ट एंड सोल ऑफ यूनाइटेड नेशंस. बताओ कि व्हाई इट इज सो इम्पोर्टेंट. सो लेट अस लुक एट ऑल द ऑर्गन्स वन बाय वन. द फर्स्ट ऑर्गन इज यूएन जनरल असेंबली. इट इज द मेन deliberative organ of UN, like our parliament. It's like parliament. It is made up of all UN member states having equal voting rights. आज के दिन में above 198 nations है वहाँ पे, and every member can send 5 representatives and 5 additional representatives to UNGA, but every member nation has only 1 vote. तो अपने कम से कम 5 से 10 लोग वहाँ पे रह सकते हैं. So we have around 5 IFS posts there. हम 2-4 और भेजते कभी कभी है, 7-8 लोग अपने IFS में ये हमने पोस्टेड हर साल होते हैं. And they function, they do their functions. It directs UNSC, मतलब Security Council, to take steps for maintaining peace and harmony in the world. It receives reports from UNSC about actions undertaken and discusses them. So हो क्या गया, UNSC became a kind of executive arm and UNGA become kind of a parliament. ठीक है. It elects temporary members of UNSC. यूएनएससी में 5 लोग तो होते हैं, बट एडिशनल मेंबर्स भी होते हैं. वो कहाँ से आते हैं? तो जनरल असेंबली आते हैं. इट अंडरटेक्स नेसेसरी स्टडीज फॉर प्रमोटिंग इंटरनेशनल कोऑपरेशन, सुपरवाइजेस द ट्रस्टीशिप एग्रीमेंट फॉर द टेरिटरीज प्लेस्ड अंडर यूएन एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, इट डिस्कसेस एंड पासेस यूएन बजट. So these are the functions of General Assembly. General Assembly begins its sessions in the month of September every year. In addition to the regular sessions, special sessions can be held according to the requirement. So don't try to memorize it, नहीं बट कर्तव्य. सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल के ऊपर थोड़ा देखना चाहिए, तवज्जो करो यहाँ पे. इट इज द मेन एग्जीक्यूटिव ऑर्गन ऑफ द यूनाइटेड नेशंस. इट कंसिस्ट ऑफ 15 members, of which 5 are permanent and 10 are non-permanent. But the veto power is only with the permanent 5 members and not with the non-permanent members. Initially, it used to be not 5 plus 10, but 5 plus 6. पहले 6 लोग होते थे, 5 permanent and 6 non-permanent. Now it is 5 plus 10. This changed in 1966. So before 66, 5 plus 6 होता था. After 66, it is increased. And these non-permanent members are selected by whom? By General Assembly for 2 years. 2 साल के लिए वो रहता है. Now, if you look at the Security Council, तो जो रिफॉर्म की बात आज के दिन में होती है वो सिंपली ये है कि which are the countries that should be there in the Security Council, and we have different arguments. India should be there because largest democracy, largest population. How can you disregard so much section of humanity and keep it out of decision making power? That is one point. दूसरा एक कैंडिडेट होता है जापान. Third candidate is generally Germany, because then UNSC was created. At that time Germany was divided, so France got opportunity. But अब वो जमाना बदल गया है. Now Germany is united in 1990. ये भी 30 साल हो गए. Germany is still yet again more powerful. So why should France continue there and not Germany? दूसरा सवाल ये है. इंडिया की केस है, जर्मनी की केस है, जापान की, ब्राजील की केस है. Not a single country is represented there from Latin America. So if you go by the parameter or argument that every continent also should be represented, then you need to have somebody from Latin America. Brazil is a strong case. And then you have to go for Africa. Africa is also not there. तो वहाँ पे कौन होगा कैंडिडेट भैया आपका? साउथ अफ्रीका ना, नाइजीरिया possibly. So we have different arguments for different countries, but one thing is for sure, Security Council's का composition needs to change. But anyway, you go to the Security Council is known as the heart of the UN, as a diverse nature of work is done here. Heart का मतलब क्या होता है? It's that part of body which if stops functioning, entire body fails. Similarly, if the Security Council is not able to function properly, then it will lead to the failure of the entire body of the UN. Therefore, it is the heart and soul of UNS. Okay. So, what are the functions? Taking important decisions like inclusion of a new member, sanction of any errant country, declaration of war, etc. It is responsible for maintaining international peace. It controls the UN peacekeeping force. It implements the decisions of UNO and sends reports to UNGA. Prior approval of UNSC is required. Is required for entry of any new member in UNO. It holds its sessions fortnightly, but the meetings can be held at shorter intervals according to the requirements. So how the voting takes place, उसमें सब में नहीं जाना, not required. Economic and Social Council. This is the third thing. The purpose of the council is to assure economic and social welfare and to make people conscious about human rights. It is about the third and the fourth point in the objectives, correct? It has 54 members. So not all UNJ members are members of the Economic Council. 54 members are elected by the General Assembly to serve staggered 3-year mandate. And इसका मेन काम जो होता है वो होता है coordinating specialized agencies. So the specialized agency is the typical word that you have here. Lots of UN agencies that you know, UNESCO है, ILO क्या होता है? International Labour Organization. It is one of the only 2 old organizations which predates UN. It comes from League of Nations era. Then IMF, क्या है IMF? Yes, you have IMO. Yes, Maritime Organization. You have WIPO. Yes, and there are many more. Total लगभग I don't know sure 12-15 around 15-16 होंगे शायद specialized agencies है. They do work in different parts of human life and they are overseen by this council. Then you have trusteeship council. आप आजकल यूपीएससी में ये भी हुआ है, people who appear multiple times and are not able to get through. Sometimes try to, if they have good connection, try to go to UN. UNESCO में जाते हैं, FAO में जाते हैं. People go there and join those bureaucracies. Sometimes, if you go by percentage, if you go by ratio, the success of getting into UN is success ratio of UN is easier than to get into Indian bureaucracy. ठीक है, but वहाँ पे it's not that easy. It's not a very cohorted job. परेशानी बहुत. तो अनपेड जॉब करना पड़ता है 1 साल के लिए, और इंटर्न इनिशियली बहुत कुछ चीजें होती है, बट स्टिल अ coveted job, because US also has been able to create a huge bureaucracy now, huge bureaucracy. Now we come to trusteeship council. Now initially I said there are total 6 organs of the UN, right? We have General Assembly, Security Council, and Economic and Social Council. This is trusteeship council, Court of Justice, and the Secretariat. Total 6 है, but 6 थे. Trusteeship council actually is no more there. It was created just to carry forward the mandate system, but they are no more called mandate because mandate system was very much maligned due to the imperial interest of French and British people after World War I, right? In League of Nations में mandate system बनाई थी, तो mandate तो बचे, but उसका नाम पूरा हो गया, तो नाम चेंज करके बन गया trusteeship council, and it was actually trusteeship. Gradually, they made every country independent, and by 1994, not a single country remained which was not independent. तो उन्होंने council को बंद suspend कर दिया. So it actually was able to do that in 40 years का time frame. Palau was the last country that became independent under trusteeship council. It is near Australia in Pacific Ocean, or they call it Oceania. वहाँ पे है. उसके बाद this thing is suspended, doesn't exist anymore. Then you go to International Court of Justice. It is the principal judicial organ of the UN. It is designed for dispute resolution among the member states. Judges are elected by members of the Security Council and General Assembly in 2 separate votes. The judges have diplomatic immunity, but the judgment is not binding on the member states. So it is not International Criminal Court. ICC is a different thing, and ICJ is different. We study that in GS. This is different. Secondly, this International Court of Justice and also ICC, you will see, are very much connected to development of international law. अब ये जो पूरा डोमेन ऑफ इंटरनेशनल लॉ है ना, इट्स अ वेरी डिफरेंट डोमेन, इट्स अ वेरी स्पेशलाइज्ड डोमेन, इट्स वेरी इवॉल्विंग डोमेन, बट देयर इज समथिंग कॉल्ड एज इंटरनेशनल लॉ. तो बन रहा है धीरे धीरे, देखिए कब तक बनता रहता है, चलता रहेगा. एंड देन द लास्ट थिंग इज द सेक्रेटरी. तो अब जब आप बात करते हो देयर इज यूएन जनरल सेक्रेटरी, तो जो होता है ही इज एक्चुअली द हेड ऑफ सेक्रेटरीट. ही इज नॉट द हेड ऑफ जनरल असेंबली, इज द हेड ऑफ सेक्रेटरीट. ठीक है. So it is headed by the UN General Secretary, who is chosen every 5 years. The first Secretary General of UN was Tregve Lee, and he has to submit an annual report to General Assembly regarding the activities of the UN. He is able to draw the attention of the Security Council in any situation he considers serious. So if there is any global crisis, he can just inform it to the Security Council कि भाई देखो कुछ करो इसके बारे में. And Secretariat looks after the day-to-day functioning of the UN.